The world around us is transforming at breakneck speed. It's as though we found ourselves in the middle of a science fiction film, where a technological revolution is churning out a stream of real-life miracles. People have learned to create clones, to modify the genes in our food, to build hadron colliders. All that on top of the daily miracles of computing, software, the internet and mobile telephones. And what about our splendid military hardware? The day will soon be upon us when a missile could fly from Moscow to New York in under half an hour. Scientists around the globe are discussing the apparently fantastical ideas of quantum supercomputers and robots capable of doing the work of any human. We're entering a new era of development. And soon the time will come when artificial intelligence will surpass the capabilities of the human brain. The mind boggles. What prospects! Yet still, it is scary. We don't always understand our own actions, or the consequences such speedy progress in science and technology could lead to. The key questions still remain unanswered. Where is all this taking us? What future do we want? Here, for example, is one little-known story from the life of the famed Soviet academic Andrei Sakharov. It turns out that very early in his career, he was part of a group of researchers who developed a most elegant way of wiping America off the face of the earth. Their plan was to detonate a number of powerful thermonuclear charges along the US coastline, producing a tsunami of unheard-of strength, with waves of up to 300 meters high that would destroy the cities of America. Fortunately, and for various reasons, that project was never to see the light of day. Sakharov's outlook on life would also undergo radical change, as he became an activist against nuclear weapons and one of the greatest humanists of the 20th century, as well as a Nobel Peace Prize laureate. But now we are all hostages to technological progress, which marches forward so fast that the average citizen struggles in vain to wrap his head around each new paradigm and adapt to it. 90% of the Earth's population have not the faintest idea what today's physicists are doing. And even the people who have caught some TV documentary still can't explain the difference between a quark and a quantum. More than this, the vast majority of people still fail to understand how a heavy airplane gets off the ground and stays airborne. Recent surveys show that 30% of people think that the sun revolves around the Earth. There are even people who still believe that the Earth is flat. On the other hand, millions of people place their faith in astrologers and fortune tellers. Sorcerers and magicians of every possible ilk continue to attract immense audiences, while charlatans and tricksters are the heroes of today's television. Of course, academics look down from their ivory towers upon these healers, mediums and soothsayers with disgust. What ignorance, what trickery, a waste of time even thinking about these people. In most cases, this attitude is wholly warranted. And yet, in the paranormal realm, there are still a few phenomena that deserve closer attention. A group of scientists studied certain individuals who are considered by many contemporaries to have a special gift. It turned out that 14% of them, to some degree or another, do indeed possess abilities that science cannot explain. For more than a century, there has been debate, even argument about paranormal phenomena. But each side remains convinced they are right. The thing is, they have different attitudes to reality, different ways and means of viewing and comprehending the world around them. Just imagine serious, smart people, one studying astrobiology, another genetics, and the third teleportation theory. Or you might turn on the TV and watch someone who can do nothing more than bend a fork with the power of thought. What nonsense, any scientist would cry, and he will be fundamentally wrong. If science systematically rejects and denies anything it cannot explain, is that constructive? Einstein put it this way: there are just two ways to live your life. The first is as if miracles do not exist. The second is as if you are surrounded by miracles. The debates that have raged on the topic of paranormal phenomenon have partly been perpetrated by protagonists with vastly different weight categories. Scientists have attempted to speak with people who were simply able to do something unusual, but who had not attempted to theorize about the science behind their talent. These miracle workers were not always able to demonstrate what they could do. Sometimes their mood was wrong, or the weather changed, or there were even interfering sunspots. And if in science it simply must be possible for a different set of researchers to recreate any experiment in a different laboratory, in the case of these strange people, things are very different. Very often they themselves cannot guarantee that they can recreate even their own miracle. Each failure by a medium draws sniggers from scientific circles. "I told you so," the scientists will say. "These are just parlor tricks. Stop believing in fairy tales." But there's really nothing to laugh about. The issue is simply too important. Humanity needs a way out of the global crisis that's been formed by rapid progress in science and technology. Many answers might be found by accepting the existence of paranormal phenomena and studying them. That could even radically change our attitude to the world's problems today. It would be preferable to have a truly civilized debate, without show business tricks or feverish publicity, but by conducting serious wide-scale research. Special groups and organizations need to be formed that include academics and mainstream cultural figures, as well as representatives of international associations and other bodies. This research could trigger serious and evidence-based study of the opinions of the most authoritative figures. First and foremost in such discussions is the crucial need to separate the wheat from the chaff, ascertaining whether a specific phenomenon can truly be called paranormal, or whether it is just a trick, or perhaps even self-deception, either by the magician or his followers. Only when those cases are left where the facts are confirmed, it must be established whether they can be explained using current or future science. And one last thing, perhaps the most contentious and important question: is this phenomenon one of those that have no scientific explanation at all, and cannot have one until all humanity starts to see the world differently? Let us imagine that the miracles have been selected, but they are all very different. So before they can be studied in more detail, they need to be categorized. They could be grouped as follows. First, phenomena not related to human activity. This includes alien civilizations, poltergeists, the giant ground drawings of ancient Nazca, weeping icons, and many others, including the very significant example of crop circles, as well as other, more complicated designs that appear overnight in fields. These odd designs appear with remarkable frequency in various corners of the Earth, and this has been the case for a very long time. The first recorded description of this phenomenon was in 1503. Recently, a group of students armed with an array of devices managed to prove that people can perform drawings of this kind themselves. They simply got down to it and did their own, in a single day. Indeed, researchers investigating this phenomenon recognize that many crop circles are the work of people. However, there is still a small fraction of highly complex figures where even experts can't understand how they appeared. The second group of phenomenon could be called the human mind and inanimate nature. It seems that the brain has already been studied fairly extensively, but nevertheless it remains full of secrets. That grey matter in our heads has extraordinary abilities. It's like a powerful generator producing a mysterious form of energy. and it behaves in the most amazing ways when it comes into contact with our environment and starts to influence the world around us. This group would include telekinesis, bending and unbending metal objects with the power of thought, pyrokinesis, dowsing, and other such activities. All these cases would be relatively easy to verify using modern technology. Even more interesting is the interaction between different mysterious energy forms in the category from brain to brain and person to person. This includes telepathy and so-called psychic healing. We can also put hypnosis into this category. Though it is universally recognized, it is not fully explained. Finally, there is one group left, which would include all the unusual phenomena associated with the supernatural capabilities of our consciousness. For example, clairvoyance, lucid dreaming, the ability to see future events, regression into past lives, stigmata and signs appearing on the skin, speaking in tongues, when people start talking in languages they didn't know before. One could, of course, say that this is charlatanism, or that these people are simply ill. But there are many examples of this phenomena, so academics and scientists answer us this: how and why does that happen? We have no answer. In the same group, we could put those rare coincidences that the theory of probability could never explain. As Einstein knowingly put it, coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. This group also includes seances run by mediums, and even the phenomenon of epiphany or sudden enlightenment. Even if 99% of paranormal cases are disproved, the remaining 1% would be more than enough to change fundamentally the way we see the world around us. There is one hypothesis that allows us to reconcile the scientific and alternative views of the world. It supposes that human consciousness is twofold, as if we exist in two parallel worlds at the same time. Part of our consciousness is focused on our day-to-day lives, and the other part is associated with a kind of energy that influences both individuals and humanity as a whole. Down through the centuries, the people of the world have each given that energy different names: sky, cosmos. Of course, sky means more than the blue ceiling over our heads, and cosmos is a concept that transcends the star-studded solar system, but something infinitely closer, at our side, and even within our very selves. And yet this is something that goes undetected in our daily lives. We can only perceive, feel, and contemplate the topmost layer of reality, barely scratching the surface. But there is another, far deeper dimension, where the power of all our minds, human sapience, is not only merged as one, but coincides also with the source of all life, the eternal wisdom of the whole universe. And that is the force that drives all processes down here on Earth. We can access that other world through the conduit of these unique people with paranormal gifts. We know of ancient practices that allow anyone to unlock the potential of their minds and feel within themselves a new spiritual dimension that is infinitely greater than thought alone. And some people, perhaps by accident or deliberately, find their way inside, disengaging their consciousness from the world around them. In the absence of a more precise term, this process might be called meditation. Different levels of meditation are possible, from light, superficial meditation to total immersion. Each involves isolating one's consciousness from the outside world to concentrate attention as much as possible. Essentially, we all meditate sometimes to one degree or another. When we contemplate complex problems, when we write poetry or lose ourselves in resolving mathematical formulae. Some extraordinarily gifted people can drive cars, read, or find their way through unfamiliar surroundings, all with their eyes covered with thick blindfolds. Of course, the first reaction of any observer is to declare this impossible, And debunkers immediately start looking for holes in the blindfold, lenses, mirrors, and other special devices, but cannot find anything. Because the blindfolds are actually part of the process. They are needed to insulate the individual from the visual information and to concentrate better. The meditative state is typical of scientists themselves. They often disconnect from the world around them when they're concentrating on solving a scientific mystery. But they are likely to describe it in different terms, such as a scientific epiphany. The more our minds can insulate themselves from information flowing in from the outside, the more we are able to penetrate this mysterious other world, either scratching the surface or plunging into its depths. Perhaps this is why most great religions come to be in a deserted wilderness, where the external world is minimized, making it much easier to concentrate without distraction. Meditation is a key part of each of the major religions. Buddhists, Hasidic Jews, dervishes, Christian monks, hermits. By entering into a trance state, they make contact with that other world. Many plunge into that special state of consciousness by using repeated words, mantras or movements, such as ritual dance, while some use music or just monotonous sound. It's not for us to assess these phenomena or judge what these people see when in such a state. All the more so because very few of these individuals can describe where they end up, or the process of separating themselves from our reality. They say that our human language just doesn't have the right words. In any case, the result of most techniques is dependent on the ability to shut oneself off from the information and random thoughts around us. In this sense, perhaps death is the most absolute form of meditation, so complete that there is not even any sense of one's own body. Nothing remains but pure consciousness. So, could death not be the final transition, where human consciousness steps into a parallel dimension, the realm occupied by the consciousness of the whole universe? For thousands of years, wise men have spoken of people uniting. It is most likely that the portal to such unity is the transformation, the awakening of our consciousness. If we imagine the human brain to be like a computer, then humanity could become the most powerful supercomputer in the universe, a higher consciousness, by uniting our minds into one single merged awareness. Perhaps then we will be able at last to answer the question of how we are to develop. In the meantime, however, we sadly do not have sufficient intelligence to control our fate. Of course, we will never be able to decode all of the secrets of the unknown, but we have a duty to attempt to comprehend that which we cannot yet fathom, step by step. And that is a goal we must pursue without end. The institutions of our societies, schools, churches, governments, corporations, political elites are mainly personally ambitious and power-loving, but sadly they often fail to understand the problems the world faces and are unable to make the decisions needed to preserve the earth and life upon it. Yet history has shown that at all critical times when it becomes a matter of saving civilization itself, people have come together and wise leaders have appeared. Let us hope that armed with the fruits of progress, but also the knowledge that lies beyond the current reach of our wise men, the knowledge that awaits its moment on the fringes of human consciousness, these new leaders will be able to preserve planet Earth and make her even more wonderful.